Howdy, B-Flow Bart here, and welcome. So, you guys are going to have to bear with me on this video. As many of you know, had some dental issues come up and ended up getting a tooth pulled. And since I have really long roots on my teeth, yeah, it tends to be kind of traumatic. So, right now I'm really weak. I mean, it's getting to the point where, I just have a hard time getting around the house right now. So, bear with me on the video. I want to try to get something done. I haven't done a video in a while. So, let's give it a shot. So, as the title of the video suggests, it's about basically getting your shit together. Getting organized. So let's actually load a different map here. We got a little test map that I use for, and that's one thing I do recommend also. I'll get into that here shortly. Getting yourself organized in your projects. The first thing you should always do is think about what you're going to need folder-wise and build your folder structure ahead of time so that you have what you need. I'm going to leave my mannequin folder the way it is. I'm not going to mess with it. The geometry folder, kind of need to leave it in place for a while. It's not taking up very much space, so may as well leave it. Inside your content folder, get started with, you're going to need an assets folder. And inside your assets folder, you're going to need some basic things here. Animations, even though I've already got a characters folder, I'm going to end up restructuring that and getting rid of that and putting that into the assets. So you're going to have your assets folder, you're going to need an audio folder, a gadgets folder, you can call it whatever you want. I'll explain that one here in a moment. Materials, meshes, textures, and those are the basics. And if you need more, we could do another one. New folder, we'll call this blueprints, even though that kind of goes along with gadgets. I like my gadget folder simply because I can use this to, if I want to create a test item, there's nothing in this one, but create a test item for deploying it on the map and testing it out in my test map. I use my gadgets folder as a testing folder, and then I can always put it into an appropriate folder afterwards. Your mesh folder is where you're going to put, and this is where you can actually break it down, character meshes, and you just create another folder called character, or whatever. That way you can break it down, skeletal meshes, static meshes. You can break it down however you need so that you know where they're going to be located. So your primary assets, when you go to audio, at this point I would actually even have one set up for music, and I would set up another one for sounds, like sound effects, things of that nature. So those would go in there. If you're going to have effects that are separate from, other assets you may create, then you may want to go ahead and create an FX folder. So that assets folder is going to contain the majority of your stuff. Then you're going to need a data folder. Having a data folder is going to be a good place for you to put in things like structures, enumerators, if you're using any of the other function libraries and things like that, this will be a good location for those. And assets, you could also do media if you wanted to. I know it kind of goes hand in hand with audio and so forth, but I'll go ahead and I'll create a new one called media. So I'm actually going to use this as my base format for doing different projects and for videos and stuff like that. So I'm wanting to not do anything major in it right now, but I'm just going to have it set up so that I can use it as my project to work with. Now I am using a UI folder. You can call it UI or UMG or interface or whatever you want to call it, and it does have its own assets but that's because this is part of my simple multiplayer template. It's got the game modes, HUD, widgets, and that's fine. You can keep all that stuff in here. Honestly, to rebuild this, we'll probably end up moving these back over to that folder, into the assets. Same thing with the images. TechnoX logo, just a basic couple little textures there. But I'll put all new stuff in the assets folder. Game modes, this is where you're going to have your main menu game mode, third person game mode. I would also probably create another folder for save game. So when you're putting save game functionality in, you know that it's going to be in your UI or interface folder. HUD, if you want to do a player HUD, which I created a simple player HUD already. So when you go into play, you can see I just got a little health bar, just so I could have that functionality in there already. So moving on to things like widgets and so forth, keep everything neat and organized here so you know where everything is. Same thing with your maps. When you're building your maps, all you have to do is right click on the name of your map, create a folder, and I can call this test or whatever I need to put inside here. I've already got one I called map shit. You can call it whatever you want, but this is where you're going to put all your base stuff in here, like your fog, your main floor that you're using for your test, light source, player start, sky sphere, skylight, things of that nature can be stored there, so that when you're creating stuff and it throws it down in here, you know how to organize it and put it in there. So if you guys got any questions along the way, just jump in there. Again, just bear with me. I have no energy, and I'm really not been able to sleep, so I'm a mess right now. So when you're working on your stuff, we'll say like, okay, I'm going to go in here and grab well, let's go ahead and get our assets and our materials, and I'm going to select a material, and let's go ahead, and somebody asked me about BSP spheres. It's a mouthful and your mouth is just not cooperating. It looks kind of crappy when you throw one into the map, but you've got tessellation here. You can adjust that down and it looks, well, that's really high resolution. Or you can break it up, and the higher your tessellation rating is going to be the number of the way you're getting all these different faces on there. For a low poly effect, I'd probably say 3. And if you're going to go smaller, like your outside radius, let's go with 50. It actually doesn't look bad. So let's actually bring it down to a height of 100, and let's take a look at it. So if you're doing low poly stuff, that's actually not bad. If you want a little bit higher resolution to it, you can always come back and bring your tessellation up. So now if you look at it on 4, it's not bad either. It's not a perfect sphere, so I'm like, okay, well, why don't I just throw in a sphere? I mean, it's round. You can. If you're just going to use a regular sphere and you want it to be perfectly round, then I'd say go with it, because it's got a lot of faces to it, and it's going to be a real high resolution. And believe it or not, whenever you're making your maps and you're trying to get decorative, and you're wanting to do things, say for the example here, I'll go ahead and I just have basic materials in here, nothing special. I see a lot of people when they're building their maps and trying to do things is they end up just using these. And well, why can't I just use these? And you can. I'm not saying you can't, but you're going to get much better success. I mean, if you want to make this to look in that color, you just change the material here, and it's the same thing. So now if I grab a BSP geometry and throw a box in here, you can see, well, that one's going to be 200 by 200, where that one's 100 by 100. And if you're not sure of the scale, that's why I say always make sure that you don't put any material on your floor. Let it stay this grid material, because it's going to actually give you the a ruler to work with. I've got my snapping set of 5, so I have a little bit better control, but 10 is usually good enough. If you want this cube to be the same size as that cube, don't ever use that. Oh my god, that kills me. So click on it from here, and then you can set it to 100 by 100 by 100, and since it's 100, we can set our Z height to 50. If you're building yourself a good test map, then I'll go ahead and I'll create a new map just to show you how to set up a good test map. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these 2 guys here. Let's go ahead and save all, make sure everything's saved the way it should be. If you're going to set up a test map, you can go to new level and just create a default, and this is what you get. Well, you know, you could just use that if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the sphere reflection capture. I'm going to grab these guys and I'm just going to drag them below the ground. And this floor that's here, I'm actually going to get rid of it. I'm actually going to go ahead and make my own. Go to geometry, box, drag it in here. And I don't want a material applied, so don't have a material selected. So you drag that in here, zero it out. And then XY is going to be 2000. And I'm only going to set the floor height or Z height to 10. And then I can do -5 here. So that's going to make the actual surface that we have is going to be absolute 0. And then my player start, I usually just move it back to 750. So just -750. This is how you would set up a good base test map for building VSB geometries or testing out blueprints or gadgets or what have you. This, like I said, makes for a good test map. No build necessary, no material on the floor, just simply because, and now also make sure you set your world settings to your game mode. So now when you hit play, you don't just get weird. So you actually have a grid on the ground that gives you 110 as your square sizes. So the little small squares, the tiny ones, are actually 10 by 10, whereas the big gray and the light gray there, those are actually going to be, sorry, the lighting looks weird when you're looking down. Those are 100 by 100. So you've got a perfect scale ruler to actually work with. So why mess it up by putting material on it? So I do recommend, I'm actually going to go ahead and load my other one. I don't need to save this. Don't save, because it's the same thing. And then go ahead and make your map shed or your map stuff folder and move all your stuff into it. So now as you're testing things, you've got the perfect environment to work with. I find a lot of times whenever I'm not feeling well, which has been pretty regular since this whole tooth thing over a week now, the BSB geometries, messing with those things, they're relaxing for me. So take some time whenever you're learning how to do them, to learn how to do them correctly. So if you want to start off with a material on them, just pick a material and make set of curved stairs. Play around with the different stuff. Get used to how to lay them out. Control Z. I don't have snapping turned on. So put down one that you've never used before and experiment with it. I mean, that's how you're going to learn. You go to your details panel, your inner radius, and there's a good example to work with. Let's actually create a cylinder, and I'm going to zero that out. I know it's sticking through the ground. I'm not worried about that right now. can always bring it up. I'm going to adjust the height anyway. But yeah, let's go ahead and our Z height is 200. So if we set it to 100, then it's going to put it right on the floor perfectly for us. If we come over here to our settings, you can see all this stuff right here. Let's make it hollow. There you go. And now inner radius is 190. Outer radius is actually 200. So does that mean that it's making the inner walls 10? No, it's actually looks like 20. So if we were to look at it, I don't know, it's pretty close. Well, yeah, okay, we'll say that it's 10. So we've got that. And now take your curved stairs and throw it on the map, zero it out. And you can see the pivot on this is here. So if you try to pivot it around and get it to go inside there, it's just going to go around the outside edge. And that's going to be fine if that's what you're trying to do, is build a set of stairs to go around the outside. But you could also scale it to where you could do the stairs on the inside. So that actually works out pretty good. It's going to give us the right height to get us up to the same height as there. But you could actually take the same thing and grab your curved stairs, or you can just throw a new one in there. They're identical in size. I haven't changed anything yet. So you've got your outer radius, or your inner radius here, is 200. What if we did that to 190? Or let's actually leave it at 200, and then what happens if we try to move this on the inside? Well, you can actually click that also and make it turn the other direction. So if you want opposing stairs to kind of match each other, you can do that. And then let's zero that one out. So you can do that if you wanted to. I mean, if you're not trying to accommodate that guy, you just want a set of stairs to match on either side of a platform or a stage or something like that, just grab these things and screw around with them. So we'll move this to negative 300 and the other one to 300. Play around with them, experiment with them, see what you can come up with. So put this at, let's see. We'll make this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's where it's nice having your grid material there. So I know that my Y can now be 600. It'll perfectly fill inside there. It's so quick and easy to use these BSP geometries. But by having your map laid out, by not having the grid material, it allows you to sit there and use the floor as a ruler to figure your width and distance and so forth. Another thing that I use quite a bit is, with no material selected, I'll grab a BSP geometry in, and if I want a hallway, I found that the width of a hallway for most situations, 200 would be a good narrow hallway, but I actually like, let's actually go ahead and get rid of these guys. So I like my hallways to actually be 300. So you can grab BSP and do 300 by 300, and the actual height is also pretty good at 300. So we'll set that at 150. So that actually is what I use for my hallways, is 300. 300 usually is a little bit tall, but when you're making long hallways, it usually works out pretty good. Now, it doesn't look like anything more than just a square or a cube, but now you have a way of sizing it up. If you've already placed a material down and like, oh crap, you can use math and try to figure out your distance between this one and this one, but use this. This becomes a tool for you to be able to, okay, I want to get a 300 by 300 gap from a hallway. And there you go. If you're building an intersection of walls and you're trying to place them down, let's just go ahead and just for giggles of it, let's do we'll do 1,000 by 10 by 300. Put it at 150 height. So you're building a set of walls, and we're going to ignore the floor right now and pretend that it doesn't have that grid on there. And you're trying to lay down, I want a perfect gap of 300 here. Grab your tool and haul tool, give it a name, select it, and now pick the wall that you want as your reference, drag it in there, and damn, I just randomly placed that wall there and it went perfectly at 300. I could have done that again if I tried. So you use that tool now to actually space between, and you can get a perfect gap every time for your hallways. So as you're developing out for your levels, that's all you need to do. Grab your haul tool, throw it in there, and drag it around. You can even save that BSP geometry just the way it is with no material on it whatsoever. So if you wanted to do that, I would say I would edit it probably. We'll do that here in just a second. So instead of the pivot being dead center, we might snap it to the floor in the middle. Would probably be good. For now, it's good. So I'm actually going to go ahead and right click on it. Actually, no, I just need to click on it here. Scroll down, create static mesh. Go to my assets folder, mesh, and this is the haul tool, or whatever you want to call it. And now we have a static mesh that we can drop into our map that is perfectly 300 by 300. I'm actually going to delete it now, because now I actually have it in the mesh folder and I can drop it in anytime I want. But you can see whenever you drag it in, since the snap point is in the center, it's always going to stick it underground. So no matter what, every time you put it in there, it's always going to be underground. And you're going to have to set the height to 150 so that it snaps in. So to fix that, let's actually go into, you don't necessarily need a collision on it if you're just going to use it as a tool. So I wouldn't even bother adding collision, but if you did want one, just click on collision here. Or if you click on simple collision, there is none. So let's uncheck that, go to collision and add box simplified collision, and now you do have a collision box. But also come down to general settings, set your light map resolution to 64 and your light map coordinate index, which is right here, to 1. And that's going to make sure that you can see that always clean and clear. So if hit save on that, and there you go. But that doesn't fix the issue of that. So just a quick fix on that. And, well, gee, how do you do that? Well, while I've got it selected, I'm going to click on this button right here. It's going to give me a split window. And what I want is to zoom in, and I want this to be at the bottom. So I'm going to hold down the alternate key, click the middle mouse button, and then drag that arrow down. Then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in as far as I can. Right click to kind of drag around. I want to make sure that that's exactly at the bottom, completely zeroed out, and that looks good. So I'm going to leave it right there in the center. So now once I've got that done, I can right click anywhere other than inside any of those boxes. Come down here to pivot and set as pivot offset, and then do that. So now we have our object is able to snap and be dragged from there. So now whenever I come in here and drag it in, it's still screwed, right? So we want to save that into the actual static mesh. So again, proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. We need to be able to change that. So you need to think about that before you save it as a static mesh. So now we're stuck with that. So plan ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this and show you how you can prevent that. Drag your box in. Alright, so we know that we're there. We want this to be 300 by 300 by 300, and we want to set our height to 150. Now, while this is still a BSP geometry, is when we need to go ahead and fix that. Now, you can fix it as a static mesh. There's a different way of doing that, but think ahead while you're actually making your stuff, and let's go ahead and fix it while we're in a BSP geometry. Again, alternate key, middle mouse button, drag the arrow down. Now, zoom in again. Actually got it right. Okay, so we're there. So again, drag in to where you can get away from the models. Right click, go to pivot, set as pivot offset. And now when you go back out, it's correct. Now, since you've got it in the spot that you want it, your pivot's in the correct location, here's where you go ahead and save it as a static mesh. So now go into your assets folder and mesh folder, and we want to call this our hull underscore tool and create static mesh. Now I'm actually going to delete the one in the map. Now that we have this one, I'm going to go into it and again go down to general. I'm not going to change this yet. I want you guys to see exactly what it is. Once you first create that static mesh, if you now throw this into your map, since we took the time to set up our pivot point beforehand, it's going to snap to the floor now and it's going to be right. But if we come in here to play, we don't have any collision on it. And that's fine for a tool, but if we want to have collision, I'll show you that in just a second. But also, if I do a build right now, that's going to do a lighting build. Watch what happens to that cube, the material on it. It's turned black. We haven't really done anything to these guys, so they're going to stay the same, but it turned black. It didn't process the material correctly. So you go into your static mesh, go to general settings, change your light map resolution 64. From here, just put in the number 64, hit tab 2 3 4, and you're already set up to do light map coordinate index. Hit the 1 key and you're set there. If you want collision, go to collision and add box simplified collision, and now you have collision. Hit save, close it, and you see the lighting is no longer black. It's going to tell us to do another lighting build, which is fine. But you can see now I have collisions, and my hallway tool, anytime I drag it into the map, since it's now a static mesh, and drag it in, it's always going to snap to the floor. So just do a lighting build, and just to assure you that it does work. There you go. So that's it. Keeping your stuff together. I randomly placed these two walls and got them perfect the first time. I know that's not going to happen again. So I'm just going to grab this wall, and I'm going to build from this wall. I want it to be 300 from here, so I'll just grab my tool. And I know that my hallway needs to be 300 by 300. So I'll just grab a hallway tool and snap it up against the wall. Now, when I grab my other wall, all I have to do is now drag it over and snap it up against that. And now you're going to have a perfect gap of 300 every time. I can drag that out of the way, and there you go. So that's how I use that basic tool system like that, creating my own tools. So now that I've created it as a static mesh, I can go back and use it anytime I want just by dragging it into the map. Other tools that might come in handy, I'm sure you'll come with your own. if you think about it, a player, if you want to simulate the height and width of a player, if you come in here and look, average you can get by with is 100. I wouldn't stay with 100, but if you look, 100 by 200 is going to be a rough opening for a player. So you take your BSP and we'll set it to 100 by 100 by 200. Leave it snapped to the floor. This is going to be a good analogy for a character. So if you don't have a character created yet, you need to make sure that you've got enough room for your character to stand. You can create a character peg or whatever you want to call it and be able to just drop this into your map. So you can put that anywhere you need to and be able to test that. And again, if you want to create that as a static mesh to use anytime, again, go ahead and think about the position of your arrow and your pivot. So just hit this, scroll out till you can find it, hold down the alternate key, grab the middle mouse button, drag it to the floor. I went too far, so you can see that blue line, so just there you go. We're going to keep it in the center. We just want to snap it down to that line. Right click anywhere outside of any of your other stuff, go to pivot, set as pivot offset, hit right there to open back up full screen again. And now when you create a static mesh, go to your asset folder, mesh, and we'll call this player underscore peg, and create static mesh. Then again, just go into collision, add box simplified collision, light map resolution 64, you can do 32 or 96, and then your light map coordinate index of 1, hit save. So now I'm going to delete this one from the map and drag in our new one, and you see it snaps right to the floor. And the middle of it now, since we saved the pivot to the dead center, if I want this to snap to a certain location, it's always going to go to that location, and the center of it's going to be there. So you know that it's 100 by 100 and 200 tall. So if you want to line up with this grid square right here, then we'll say 50 and negative 50. And I could snap it to that square if I needed to. So those are some basic tools that you're going to need when you're creating your maps. It comes in quite handy. Make yourself a basic set of tools. You can actually create another folder just for tools, or you could actually put these in your gadget folder or what have you. I hope this video has helped you guys out a little bit. Like I said, this is just something I wanted to get you guys a video with some practical information in it, even though I'm not feeling very well. So hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you want to see on Discord, and we'll see you guys later.